Good morning, and welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is the Willie Lynch syndrome. The Willie Lynch syndrome and its history and the problems that it has caused and continues to reverberate in Black communities in America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Black countries all over the world. And this Willie Lynch syndrome goes back 500-600 years, when the British West Indies slave owner by the name of Willie Lynch drafted this strategy of divide and conquer on how to hold down his slaves in order not to face any rebellious acts from the slaves on his plantation. So Willie Lynch was invited by the Virginia slave owners in 1712, where on the banks of the James River, he laid out his plans and strategies of holding down slaves in Virginia plantations. And this was basically a divide and conquer method, where he talked about pitching slaves against one another, pitching older slaves against younger slaves, pitching slaves in the master's house against slaves on the plantation, pitching light-skinned slaves against dark and brown-skinned slaves, as well as also using the slave Bible as a tool for the slaves to see the masters as their savior in order to prevent them from revolting against their enslavement. So basically, this is the methods that was used by Willie Lynch. The other slave owners decided to use the same methods on their plantations in America. And looking around us in Black American communities in America or the Caribbean or Africa, even if you believe in the Willie Lynch syndrome, as is being debated every day on whether it's a hoax or it existed or it didn't. There's one thing we can all agree, that you see these divide and conquer methods, enviness, pitching blacks, light skin, dark skin, brown skin against each other, exist in our communities, whether in America, Caribbean, Africa, or anywhere Black people are. We see it around us every day. So you can disagree or agree on whether it existed. By the end of the day, the Willie Lynch syndrome exists in our communities in America, Caribbean, and Africa as well. So this Willie Lynch syndrome is part of the problems that has also contributed to our lack of development, our lack of building wealth, our lack of progress in the world community today. Because at the end of the day, we pick on foolish fights, fights that don't benefit us, fights that don't unite us. Instead of us uniting as a united front to confront our problems in this world community, we rather pick fights that rather tears us apart. It tears us apart and brings divisions in our communities, whether in America, Africa, or the Caribbean. And the reason why I'm talking about this is quite recently, there was an entertainment program that was done by a great former football player by the name of Shanon on his podcast called The Club Shay, where he has some guests, comedians, come on to talk about what they have been experiencing as Black comedians, as well as actors and musicians and so on and so forth. And this drew a lot of buzz in the Black community with regards to some of the problems that these people claim that they had to go through in terms of their entertainment and also the movie industry. But I would like you guys to hear in one of these interviews what Stephen A.Smith an ESPN analyst had to say about how Black people continue to tear down each other. So let's go ahead and hear what Stephen A.Smith had to say on this issue. And I'll get back to you, fellas, and we'll talk about it. Because sometimes, you know, it's unfortunate, but that's what happens.
Man, so are you. He's doing his thing, you're doing your thing. I will remind you that Shannon Sharp is a major contributor to my daytime job, which is First Take on ESPN. And to be quite honest with you, we've grown and become friends. I got a lot of love for the brother. I respect the hell out of him. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He's a Hall of Famer. And the reality is that he's doing big things. You can say what you want, but 68 million views for the Katt Williams interview is 68 million views. The first order of business with Monique in this interview in day one, with it being 5 million views. Ladies and gentlemen, that's over 73 million views. You can say whatever you want to say. You just can't take away from that reality and what Shannon Sharp has brought to the table. The flip side to that, however, is that when you do interviews of this nature, we've heard noises emanating from our community because both of us are Black men. I'm from the North New York City. He's from the South. It doesn't matter. As Black men, as brothers, as Black people, what Dion Cole alluded to on numerous occasions in terms of negativity selling, in terms of us going after one another, what Chris Spencer alluded to when he talked about how nobody does this to one another but Black people, it's inescapable. It's a reality. And so as a result of that, I have to answer questions because people have literally asked me, Stephen A., what do you think about how Shannon Sharp interviewed Katt Williams and Monique? What do you think about the pushback or lack thereof? Why give somebody the platform to come out on your show and say all the things that they said?
All right, fellas. You heard Stephen A. Smith talking about what Spencer had said about how Black people tend to tear down each other. But fellas, I get it. I understand, you know, speak no evil of other Black people and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, this should not be the reason why people should not have the right to go to any show, express what they feel had happened to them to the world. You don't want Black people to be bickering or fighting among each other. I get that. But at the end of the day also, that does not negate the fact that Katt Williams and Monique believed that they were wrong by these people that they mentioned in that interview. I don't subscribe to the idea that because you are Black or we are Black people, when something is wrong, we have to keep our mouth shut just because of that. I don't believe in that. I believe wrong is wrong and right is right. It doesn't matter whether it's from the white person or the Black person. Wrong is wrong and right is right. It's just like saying that somehow a Black slave owner is not as bad as a white slave owner. I mean, give me a break, fellas. It doesn't matter. Both of them are slave owners and both of them are just as bad as each other. To me personally, even the Black slave owner is even worse than the white slave owner. You know, so I get it. Sometimes we talk about, or we don't want to create this confusion in our community. We want a united front. But united front at what cost? United front at what cost? Are you talking about people who believe that they have been wronged by other Black people? Who are we? Who are we to say that they don't have the right to go on a show to talk about how they felt? No. I don't know Katt Williams and I don't know Monique. I heard what they said, and according to what they said, they have received what they said. I have to form my opinion whether to believe them or not to believe them. But nobody has the right to say that you don't have the right to go and tell your side of the story. just because you are black and you are talking about other black people doing you wrong, you have to hold back. I get it. I get it. By the end of the day, we also have to appreciate that black people will stand up regardless of who that they are confronting. And I appreciate that these people were able to stand up for what they believe. You know, because tell us, in this same podcast by Stephen A.Smith, he also talked about how he got to where he is and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But I'm going to get into that later, where I'm also going to play the video clip of what he said with regards to that. But the bottom line to this issue of what you call the relation syndrome is that, yes, you want to stay as a united front. I believe in black unity. I believe in fighting the common cause to enable development within black communities, whether it's in America or Caribbean or Africa. But by the same token, I also believe that black people should also hold other black people accountable if they are wrong. It's that simple. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you are the top dog in the music industry or the movie industry. These black people have to be held accountable just like we hold white people accountable in this country. It's that simple. Because you cannot say that because he's black, we should turn a blind eye when they are doing something that is wrong to fellow black people. That to me is even worse than a white man doing it to a black person. Because at the end of the day, you expect better from black people. Because looking at the history of black people in America, we can never forget that black people have to fight collectively because of the history. Black people always have to fight collectively. And out of that, blacks saw themselves as a united front in this country. Blacks in America did not see themselves as individuals. It had always been a united front because segregation laws, discrimination, slavery, and all of that. They did not enslave you because you look different. They enslaved you because you were black. And so out of that, for black people also to fight all these evil things that they had to go through in America, they also have to fight collectively. So they have to unite with one voice to fight these evil things that they had to go through with regards to slavery and so on and so forth. But fellas, let's go ahead and also hear what Stephen A.Smith had to say with regards to something about how he got to where he is as a ESPN analyst. And that is where I also strongly disagree with his notion of that. So let's go ahead and hear what he had to say about that. It is very, very unfortunate, but that is what he said. And I strongly disagree with him on that one. I strongly disagree with him on this one. I mean, so fellas, let's hear what Stephen A.Smith had to say about
I respectfully disagree. Bobby came on this show, they said what they wanted to say. Senator the Entertainer came on the show, they said what they wanted to say. When Katt Williams came on the show, he said what he wanted to say. When Monique came on the show, she said what she wanted to say. We don't know what level of veracity and truth is attached to any of their words or lack thereof, and we have to be real and authentic in that regard. But when somebody wants me to get at Shannon Sharp, it's not happening. I'm going to support my brother. Even if I think he's wrong, I'm still going to say it, but I'm going to support him anyway. Meaning letting him know I'm always going to look out. But in this particular instance, I think the ire is being pointed in the wrong direction. So many people want to sit up there and talk about people were famous for doing this to me, coming to me and having expectations they wanted to keep on my shoulders. Why? Because guess what? Now you in this position, Stephen A. Well, what the hell did you do to get me here? When I was scratching and clawing and climbing my way to this position, where were you then? You didn't do anything for me then, but when I got there, all of a sudden I owe you and I'm in a place to me. I'm not going to engage in condemnation, but I did feel a need and an obligation to comment because so much stuff is being said about this man that works with me 2 days a week on ESPN's First Take. And
All right, fellas. So basically, you heard Stephen A.Smith in towards the end talking about people want to get on his shine when he got to the way he is today. But when he was going through his struggles and so on and so forth, where were these people? See, this is where I beg to differ with Stephen A.Smith on this issue. Like I alluded to earlier, that blacks were enslaved in America, not based on which part of the country or Africa that you came from. You were enslaved because you were black Africans, period. It had nothing to do with which part of Africa you came from. And I'm going to be very objective on this issue, fellas. Very, very objective. Because if you look at slavery in America, because blacks were considered slaves and 3/5 of the human, it had nothing to do whether you were in the South or the North or the Midwest or whatever. As a black person, you were always considered 3/5 of a human as well as a slave in America at that time. So these slaves had to fight collectively, to free themselves, fight collectively for the civil rights to happen. So it wasn't about individualism. So this is where I want people to understand about this issue of when black people today get to certain places and other black people look up to them in terms of also to get to where they are, then they tend to think that, oh, I got there by myself. I worked my butt off to get here. I was the one going to night class, taking night classes and all that stuff. We get all of that. At the end of the day, you have to go through that by yourself. It is true. You have to be the one to go through all the struggles and so forth as an individual. But let's not forget also that for you even to get the opportunity to apply for that job that you have, somebody had to pave the way for you. And those people who united, fought collectively for those civil rights laws that paved the way for you to get that position. You didn't know them. They didn't know you, but they fought collectively. And out of that, you have been able to get opportunity today to be where you are. So you can say all that you want, regardless of whether you got there by yourself or you went to night school by yourself or you went to apply for the job by yourself. So I get that. But if not for the blacks who united and fought collectively because of the history of America to pave the way for you, you wouldn't be where you are today. And that is what Stephen A.Smith has to understand. Nobody is disputing your achievement as an individual. Yes, you did well. You've done well, and you did it by yourself. But somebody had to fight to pave the way for you. And that fight was done collectively among black people and minorities in this country. I mean, a clear example is my hero, Muhammad Ali. To be frank with you guys, fellows, Muhammad Ali is, in my opinion, in the past 100 years, is the greatest civil rights icon of the 100 years of civil rights in America is Muhammad Ali. There's nobody more than Muhammad Ali for the past 100 years of this civil rights movement in America. There's nobody who comes even close to Muhammad Ali. Because based on his analogy, or what he was saying, Stephen A.Smith was saying, Muhammad Ali had to fight on his own to become a great boxer. But when he decided to involve himself in the struggles of the civil rights, he did not say that because I am a great boxer and I got here by myself, I was in the ring by myself. He laid everything on the line. This was a man who was making millions of dollars, but decided to give it all up. And he knew what he was going against. He knew what he was going against in this country when he was protesting against the Vietnam War, when he was fighting, struggling on behalf of blacks in all over America on the civil rights issues in America. He knew all of this because the money was coming. It was there, but he gave it all up. He gave it all up because he believed in it. Because he believed that the civil rights of black people in America was not about an individual. He believed that the civil rights of America was collectively for the civil rights of every minority in this country. And he had to lay out everything. And he gave up everything. This man was even banished from fighting in almost all the 50 states in this country when he was then the greatest boxer of all time in the world. He was banned from fighting, but they wouldn't even give him a license, renew his license to fight because of his stance on civil rights and against the war that was going on in Vietnam. He was banned. He couldn't fight. He couldn't earn a living, and he knew that, and he understood that. But Ali didn't care because Ali believed that it was better for him to stand up and unite with his fellow African Americans in this country and use his voice as a leader at that time to fight for that civil rights rather than talking about individual. And that is what Muhammad Ali did. If Muhammad Ali was selfish, the first black billionaire in America would never have been any other person other than Muhammad Ali. This man was making over $10 million a fight in 1973. If he was selfish, he could have said, who cares? I got into the ring by myself. But he didn't. He laid it all out and fought for every black person in America at the time. He used his voice to stand up for what is right. He didn't think about the money that he was losing. He didn't. Because if he thought about the money, he could have always gone back because they always told him anytime he was ready, they were ready to reinstate him. But he said no. He stood on his ground. He stood on his ground until when the Supreme Court of the United States finally agreed with him. By then, he had lost a lot, but he didn't care. Years later, before all the white Americans and so on, people coming with Kumbaya, Ali, but nobody remembered when he was standing alone, fighting the US government on civil rights as well as Vietnam. They eventually honored Muhammad Ali. But that is what a great person Muhammad Ali was. That was a man who knew what he was giving up, but didn't care because he believed in fighting for all black and minorities in America. So when I hear people like Stephen A.Smith talking about, I got here and I did this when I was like, well, let's be real. Everybody understands every individual person that has become successful in this country, whether you are Black or a minority, yes, you have to put in a lot of the effort by yourself. But at the end of the day, for you to get to this position, some people have to pave the way for you to get there. And those people who pave the way, they not say that they have to pave the way because you are their brother or sister. They paved the way because they believe what they were doing was the right thing for them to do. Some people laid their lives. People lost their lives on that. Just for you to be able to get the opportunity that you have today. I mean, and this goes to a lot of prominent Black people in America and around the world. That when they get to certain position in this world, some people tend to forget that the Black struggle in America, in particular, is totally different. I only speak of the same with a white person here because it's different. The Black struggle was never about an individual. It was a collective effort by Black people in this country. Like I stated earlier, slavery was not about an individual thing. Every Black person in America at that time was considered a slave. It didn't matter where you came from. When they saw you down the street, you were considered a slave, period. That's what it was. And you were considered 3/5 of a human being. They didn't say because you were light skin or dark skin or brown skin. As far as you're a Black person, that's how you were considered, period. And that is what people have to understand. And this goes back to something also I read some time ago about Clarence Thomas. Who is Clarence Thomas? Clarence Thomas was born in Georgia to a Gula family. And I know a lot of people don't know who the Gulas are, but the Gulas are Black African slaves that escaped along the islands of South Carolina when they were enslaved in America. So they settled along the islands in South Carolina. And some of them moved all the way from South Carolina to Florida to Georgia. And if you're going to talk about Black Africans in America, there's no African than the Gulas. They still have some of their ancient African traditions in their traditions in South Carolina and wherever they reside in the South. Even within their language, they still have some African dialects in it. And these are the Gulas, because when they escaped from their plantations, from their slave masters, they settled along the islands of the coast of South Carolina, some places Florida, and also Georgia. And Clarence Thomas was born to a Gula family. This is where Clarence Thomas came from. The Gulas had to endure a lot because of that. And out of that upbringing by his grandparents, who were Gulas, went through missionary schools all the way to Yale, and eventually at the United States Supreme Court. He did not get there just by himself. He got there because of the support network of the Gulas and other Black communities in this country. And that is how, as a Black American, I don't care how you get anywhere in this country. Black America's struggle in America was not about individualism. It was a collective effort. And up to this day, it's that same collective effort that has guided all African Americans and other minorities in this country to wherever they are, whether in corporate America or business or whatever. You can never take away that collective effort that has paved the way for every Black or minority in this country. Because that is how it was supposed to have been fought, and that is how it was fought. So, fellas, if it's Sunday, it's the Africa Weekly Talk. God bless you guys and have a great week. Peace and love.